"You're just an itty girl." They laughed. Mafia boss hired her to hack his enemies and protect his heart. The fluorescent lights of Neoledger Financial hummed with a sound that felt less like electricity and more like a migraine taking physical form. It was 8 in the evening on a Tuesday, and the open plan office, designed to foster collaboration and transparency, mostly just fostered noise and the spread of flu viruses. Ava Nguyen sat hunched at her desk, the ergonomic chair doing absolutely nothing for the tension knotting her shoulders. She was 26 years old, although the dark circles under her eyes made her feel roughly 60. On her dual monitors, lines of code cascaded in a rhythmic waterfall of green and white. She was deep in the architecture of the firm's transaction gateway, patching a vulnerability that had the potential to expose thousands of client social security numbers. "Excuse me, Ava?" The voice broke her concentration. Ava did not turn around immediately. She finished the command line, hit enter, and then swiveled her chair. Standing there was Kyle, a junior account manager holding a stark white coffee mug that said, "Hustle harder," and he looked confused, which was his natural state whenever he had to interact with technology more complex than a microwave. "Hey, Kyle," Ava said, keeping her voice neutral. "What do you need?" "My email is acting weird," Kyle said, gesturing vaguely with his mug. "It won't load the new signature block with the animated logo. Can you fix it?" "The guys in the pit said to just ask the IT girl." Ava felt a sharp, familiar spike of irritation in her chest. She took a slow breath. "Kyle, I am a cybersecurity analyst. I am currently patching a critical firewall vulnerability that protects the entire company's liquidity. I am not help desk support. You have to put in a ticket for email issues." Kyle laughed, a dismissive, airy sound. "Come on, Ava. It will take you 2 seconds. You are already typing stuff anyway. Just work your magic. You are the IT girl, right? That is what they pay you for." He winked and walked away, leaving her staring at his retreating back. She turned back to her screens, her fingers hovering over the mechanical keyboard. Just the IT girl. The phrase had followed her for 2 years at Neoledger. It did not matter that she had graduated top of her class with a degree in computer science. It did not matter that she understood the architecture of this network better than the chief technology officer, who spent most of his time golfing. To the men in suits who roamed the glass-walled conference rooms of Harbor City, she was just the quiet Asian woman who crawled under desks to plug in Ethernet cables. She checked her bank account balance on her phone, a habit born of anxiety. The number was pitiful. The student loan payment was due on the 15th, and it would swallow nearly half her paycheck. Then there was rent in Harbor City, a place where a studio apartment cost more than a mortgage in the Midwest. And finally, there was the transfer she made every month to her mother. Linda Nguyen ran a small nail salon in Little Saigon, 3 bus transfers away. She worked 12-hour days, inhaling acetone and filing acrylics until her hands ached. Also, she could tell her customers proudly that her daughter worked with computers in a high-rise downtown. Ava could not tell her mother that the high-rise felt more like a prison cell, or that the prestigious job barely paid enough to keep the lights on. Ava rubbed her temples and refocused. She had to finish this deployment tonight. By 11 at night, the office was deserted save for the cleaning crew vacuuming the far corridors. Ava was running the final diagnostics when a string of data caught her eye. It was a subtle anomaly in the outbound traffic logs. To an untrained eye, it looked like standard server chatter, a routine backup sequence. But Ava knew the rhythm of this network. She knew its heartbeat. This beat was wrong. She leaned in, her eyes narrowing behind her anti-glare glasses. Someone was siphoning data. It was slow, methodical, and disguised as a maintenance protocol. It was not a glitch. It was a tunnel. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She immediately traced the packet origin. It was bypassing the standard firewalls using an authorized admin credential. But the geolocation was bouncing through 3 different proxy servers in Eastern Europe. She grabbed her phone and dialed Todd, her immediate manager. It rang 4 times before he answered, his voice thick with sleep and annoyance. This better be good. Ava. Todd grumbled. Todd, we have a problem, Ava said, her voice tight. I am seeing unauthorized egress traffic on the main server. It looks like a localized breach. Someone is pulling client data right now. I need authorization to shut down the external ports. There was a pause, and then a heavy sigh on the other end. Ava. We are in the middle of the quarterly close. If you shut down the external ports, the overseas trading desk goes dark. We lose millions in transaction fees. We are going to lose a lot more than fees if this is a data exfiltration, Ava insisted. Todd, the pattern is distinct. It is a mirror attack. You are overthinking it, Todd said, his tone shifting from sleepy to patronizing. We just updated the backup protocols yesterday. You are probably seeing the new cloud sync. Stick to the script. Ava, finish the patch and go home. You are tired. You are seeing ghosts. I am not seeing ghosts. I am seeing a theft, Ava snapped, losing her patience. Don't touch the ports, Todd ordered, his voice hard. That is a direct instruction. We will review the logs in the morning meeting. Good night, Ava. The line went dead. Ava stared at the phone. She looked back at the screen. The data continued to bleed out, bite by silent bite. She hovered her mouse over the emergency kill switch she had coded for exactly this scenario. If she pulled it, she saved the data, but she defied a direct order and cost the company revenue. If she left it, the data was gone. Fear, cold and pragmatic, washed over her. She had rent to pay. She had loans. She had her mother. She could not afford to be wrong. She could not afford to be fired for insubordination. With a shaking hand, she logged the incident in an email to Todd and the chief security officer, timestamped it, and then stood up. She did not touch the kill switch. She packed her bag and walked out of the building, the feeling of nausea churning in her stomach. The next morning, the world fell apart. Ava arrived at NeoLedger at 8 to find the lobby swarming with frantic executives and stony-faced legal consultants. The news broke before she even reached the elevator. A massive dump of NeoLedger's premium client data, credit card numbers, social security info, private investment strategies, had appeared on the dark web at 4 a.m. The panic on the trading floor was palpable. Phones were ringing off the hooks. Stock prices were plummeting in real time on the overhead monitors. Ava barely made it to her cubicle before HR summoned her. The conference room was cold, the air conditioning blasting as if to freeze the tension in the air. Todd sat at the end of the long mahogany table, looking pale and sweaty. Next to him sat the chief security officer and 2 members of the board who looked like they wanted to execute someone by firing squad. Sit down, miss. Go in, the security officer said. Ava sat. She folded her hands in her lap to hide that they were trembling. I sent an email last night, she began, her voice steady despite her fear. At 11:15. I identified the traffic and requested authorization to... We saw the email. The officer cut her off. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of the logs. The timestamps show you were the only person logged into the mainframe with admin privileges when the breach accelerated. You found it remarkably fast. Miss Nguyen, almost as if you knew exactly where to look. Ava felt the blood drain from her face. I found it because I was doing my job. I explicitly told Todd to shut down the ports. Todd cleared his throat, avoiding her eyes. I recall you mentioning a glitch with the backup protocols. Ava, I told you to monitor it. I certainly did not authorize you to facilitate a transfer. Ava stared at him, horror dawning on her. He was rewriting the conversation. He was saving his own skin. Todd, you told me I was overthinking it. You ordered me not to touch the ports. It sounds like you are flustered. Ava, one of the board members said, his voice dripping with disdain. This is a sophisticated attack. It required inside knowledge of our architecture. You are the only one who has been working on that specific gateway all week. I did not do this, Ava said, her voice rising. Check the IP addresses. Check the proxy chains. I was trying to stop it. We are conducting a full forensic audit, the security officer said, standing up. But until that is concluded, Your employment is terminated, effective immediately for gross negligence and potential breach of contract. Legal will be in touch regarding liability. Security is waiting outside to escort you," Todd added, finally looking at her with a mix of pity and cowardice. The walk from the conference room to the elevator was the longest minute of Ava's life. The office had gone silent. Heads turned as the uniformed security guard walked close behind her. She saw Kyle, the account manager from the night before, whisper something to a colleague. She saw a phone tilt up, capturing her humiliation. She could hear the whispers. "Crazy it girl, I heard she sold the codes. Probably couldn't handle the pressure." She held her head high, clutching her purse, her face burning, but inside, she was screaming. By 7 that evening, the adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a hollow, aching dread. Ava sat in a booth at the back of a place called the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar 3 blocks from the financial district where the floor was sticky and the lighting was forgivingly dim. She was nursing a watered-down gin and tonic she could barely afford. Her phone screen was cracked. She had dropped it when the security guard rushed her out of the building, and she was scrolling through job listings, but the news was already out. A tech blog had picked up the story. Insider threat suspected at NeoLedger. Her name wasn't mentioned yet, but Harbor City was a small town when it came to fintech. She was finished. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, smooth, and entirely out of place in a bar that smelled of stale beer and regret. Ava looked up. Standing by her booth was a man who looked like he had stepped out of a noir film, or perhaps a very expensive magazine advertisement for whiskey. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him with bespoke precision. He had dark hair swept back from a sharp, angular face, and eyes that were the color of obsidian, dark, unreadable, and intensely focused on her. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat opposite her. "I'm not looking for company," Ava said, her guard instantly up. "And I definitely cannot afford whatever you are selling. I am not selling anything," the man said. He sat down anyway, his movements fluid and confident. He signaled the bartender with a subtle raise of 2 fingers, ordering a top-shelf scotch for himself and another gin for her without asking. "My name is Dante," he said, "and you are Ava Nguyen." The woman who spotted the polymorphic injection code in NeoLedger's system 6 hours before their $1 million security software did. Ava froze. Her hand hovered over her bag, where she kept a small canister of pepper spray. "Who are you? How do you know about the code? I make it my business to know where talent is being wasted," Dante said. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving hers. "I saw you leave the building today. The security guard was touching your elbow. Disrespectful, especially considering you were the only person in that entire glass tower who actually tried to save them." Ava stared at him. The ambient noise of the bar seemed to fade. "You are a recruiter?" Dante smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. It was a cold, calculated expression, though not unkind. "Let us say I represent a private interest, a consultancy of sorts. We have clients who value discretion and competence, qualities NeoLedger clearly lacks," Ava scoffed, a bitter sound. "Well, you are wasting your time. I am toxic assets right now. Todd threw me under the bus. I will be lucky if I can get a job fixing printers at a library." "Todd is a middle management parasite," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. And NeoLedger's failure was inevitable. Their security budget was all marketing and no infrastructure. It was only a matter of time before someone with initiative took advantage of it. He spoke about the breach with a disturbing familiarity. Ava narrowed her eyes. "You talk like you admire the hackers." She said, "I admire efficiency," Dante corrected, "and I despise waste. You, Ava, are a wasted asset. You saw the pattern. You knew it was a mirror attack. That requires intuition, not just coding." He reached into his jacket pocket and slid a heavy, cream-colored business card across the sticky table. It had no logo, just a number and an embossed initial. "R. I have a job opening," Dante said. "I need someone to harden a network. Someone to look at my systems and think like the wolves trying to get in. I need a hunter, not a sheep." "Is this legal?" Ava asked bluntly. Dante paused. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. We operate in a competitive market. Sometimes the lines are blurred, but the pay is 5 times what NeoLedger gave you, in cash, if you prefer, and no one will ever tell you to stick to the script. Ava looked at the card, then back at him. 5 times her salary. It was a life-changing amount. It was freedom. It was safety for her mother. But she looked at his eyes, dark, dangerous, knowing this man was not corporate. He was something else entirely. She felt a primal warning bell ringing in the back of her mind. "I am a cybersecurity analyst," Ava said, her voice trembling slightly. "I want a career. I want to build a resume. I do not want to work for... whatever this is. I am not a criminal." Dante studied her for a long moment. He did not look offended. He looked intrigued. Everyone draws a line. Ava, until the world pushes them across it. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He left a $100 bill on the table to cover the drinks. "Keep the card," he said softly. "When the world pushes you, call me." He turned and walked out of the bar, disappearing into the night as if he were made of shadows. Ava stared at the empty seat for a long time. Then she grabbed her bag and stormed out, leaving the card on the table. But halfway to the door, she stopped. She cursed under her breath, turned around, walked back to the booth, and snatched the card. She shoved it deep into her pocket and left. The apartment building where Ava lived was a 4-story walk-up that smelled of boiled cabbage and mildew. She climbed the stairs, her legs feeling like lead. All she wanted was to sleep for a week. When she unlocked her door, she saw the envelope on the floor. It was red. Her heart sank. She picked it up. It was a final notice for her student loans. But underneath it was another letter, this one addressed to her mother's salon, forwarded to Ava's address because she handled the paperwork. She tore it open. Notice of rent adjustment. The landlord for the salon was raising the rent by 40%, effective the 1st of the month. Ava dropped her bag on the floor and sank onto her cheap IKEA sofa. She stared at the peeling paint on the ceiling. 40%. That was impossible. It would bankrupt the salon. Her mother would lose everything, her independence, her pride, the one thing she had built since coming to this country. Ava closed her eyes. She thought of Todd's lying face. She thought of the security guard gripping her arm. She thought of the whispers, just the IT girl. And then she thought of the man in the charcoal suit. 5 times your salary. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the card. It felt heavy in her hand. Heavier than a piece of paper should be. The embossed R caught the light of the street lamp outside her window. Fear tightened her throat. She knew, with an instinct deeper than code, that calling this number was a point of no return. It was a door that, once opened, could never be locked again. But then she looked at the red envelope on the floor. Ava Nguyen sat in the dark, the city sirens wailing in the distance, and traced the edge of the card with her thumb. She was terrified, but for the first time all day, she was not helpless. She set the card on the coffee table, right next to the eviction notice, and waited for the dawn. The coffee shop was sterile, smelling of burnt roast and industrial cleaner. Ava sat across from Marcus, a recruiter she had found on LinkedIn who had promised her he could place anyone with a pulse and a degree. He was not looking at her. He was looking at his tablet, his finger scrolling rapidly, and his expression was souring by the second. Ava adjusted the collar of her blouse. It was her best interview top, but it felt flimsy against the air conditioning. "So," Marcus said, finally setting the tablet down. He looked at her with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "I am going to be honest with you. Ava, I cannot place you." Ava felt a cold stone settle in her stomach. "What do you mean?" "I have certifications. I have 3 years of experience. I managed the entire back-end migration for—" "I know what you did," Marcus interrupted. His voice was hushed, glancing around to make sure the baristas were not listening. "Everyone knows. The breach at NeoLedger? The rumors are not just about negligence. Ava, people are saying you left a back door open on purpose. They are saying you were disgruntled and sold the keys to the kingdom. That is a lie, Ava said, her voice trembling with indignation. I tried to stop it. I have logs that prove— It does not matter what you have, Marcus said, leaning in. In this town, reputation is currency. And right now, your currency is counterfeit. No reputable firm in Harbor City will touch you. The liability insurance alone would be a nightmare. Someone powerful has made sure the narrative is set in stone. You are radioactive. He stood up, not bothering to shake her hand. Delete my number. Ava, I cannot help you. Ava walked out of the coffee shop into the gray, drizzling afternoon. Radioactive. The word echoed in her mind. It was not just bad luck, it was a setup. Someone had not only fired her, they had salted the earth so nothing could grow back. She checked her bank account on the bus ride home. The number was critically low. Her mother had called twice that morning, asking about the rent increase, her voice high and tight with worry. Ava had let it go to voicemail. When she got back to her apartment, the silence was deafening. The red eviction notice was still on the table where she had left it. Next to it lay the cream-colored card with the embossed letter R. Fear warred with survival. If she made this call, she was crossing a line she could never uncross. But if she did not make the call, her mother lost the salon. Her mother lost her dignity. Ava picked up the card. Her fingers were shaking, but her resolve was hardening into something brittle and sharp. She dialed the number. It rang once. Romano. A deep voice answered. It is Ava Nguyen. She said— There was a pause, and she could hear the faint sound of classical music in the background. I was wondering how long it would take, Dante said. His voice was not gloating. It was simply a statement of fact. I have conditions, Ava blurted out, her heart hammering against her ribs. I am listening. I am a cybersecurity analyst, she said, clutching the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. I am not a criminal. I will not write malware for you. I will not steal money from grandmothers or shut down hospital grids. I will not help you hurt innocent people. I will only defend your systems and uncover threats against you. That is it. If you want a cyber hitman, call someone else. Silence stretched on the line. Ava held her breath, terrifyingly certain he was going to laugh at her or hang up. Instead, she heard a low, rich chuckle. It sounded genuinely amused. You are negotiating the moral terms of your employment before you have even accepted the salary, Dante said. I am impressed. Most people just ask how much cash is in the bag. Do we have a deal or not? Ava asked. We have a deal, Dante said, his tone shifting, becoming businesslike. Pack your bag, Ava. A car will be outside your building in 20 minutes. The car was a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a man who looked like he could bench press the vehicle if it broke down. He did not speak to her. He drove them out of the city center, past the glittering skyscrapers, and into the industrial district near the docks. The destination was a shipping logistics company called Romano Freight. To the naked eye, it was a legitimate business. Forklifts beeped in the yard, moving crates. Men in high-visibility vests shouted over the noise of diesel engines, but the driver bypassed the main entrance and pulled around to a nondescript steel door at the back of the warehouse. Dante was waiting for her. He wore a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that looked surprisingly strong for a man she had assumed sat behind a desk. Welcome to the real office, Dante said. He led her inside. The contrast was jarring. The exterior was grimy industrial chic, but the interior was sleek, soundproofed, and high-tech. They walked down a corridor lined with frosted glass. Dante gestured to a large man with a thick scar running from his ear to his jaw. This is Marco. He handles personnel and physical security. If you have a problem with anyone, you tell him. Marco nodded at her. It was not a friendly nod, but it was not hostile. It was the assessment of a guard dog deciding if she was a threat. And this, Dante continued, pointing to a woman sitting at a glass desk reviewing a stack of contracts, is Sophia? She handles our legal fronts and strategic acquisitions. Sophia looked up. She was striking, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to dissect Ava in seconds. Try not to break anything, Sophia said dryly. We just updated the servers. Dante led Ava to the end of the hall and pushed open a heavy door. Ava stepped inside and stopped. It was a server room. It was not the massive, sterile data center of NeoLedger, but it was impressive. Rows of racks hummed with cooling fans, monitors lined the wall, displaying traffic flows, security feeds, and encrypted communication channels. It is semi-professional, Dante said, standing behind her. My previous guy was talented, but he lacked vision. He set up the walls, but he left the gates wide open. Ava walked to the main terminal. She typed in a few diagnostic commands, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The code that spilled across the screen was messy, patched together with digital duct tape. It is vulnerable, Ava muttered, her professional brain taking over. You have 3 open ports on the legacy database, and your encryption standard is 2 years out of date. A script kiddie could punch through this in an hour. That is why you are here, Dante said. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. We have rivals. Ava. The Kovac crew operates out of the rail yards. They deal in heavy arms and human misery. Then there is the Black Harbor cartel. They are moving into digital extortion. They are trying to map my supply lines. I need you to blind them. I need you to secure this fortress and tell me when they are coming before they spill blood on my doorstep. Ava looked at the screen, then at him. He was standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something metallic, like rain on pavement. I can patch the holes, Ava said softly, and I can set up a honeypot to trace the intrusion attempts. Do it, Dante said. The first week was a blur of caffeine and coding. Ava worked like a woman possessed, driven by the fear of failure and the desperate need to prove that she was more than just a scapegoat. She hardened the firewalls, rewrote the encryption keys, and set up a monitoring system that filtered every packet of data entering or leaving the building. On Thursday, she caught something. She was monitoring the email traffic for one of Dante's shell companies, a luxury car import business, when she noticed a phishing pattern. It was sophisticated, embedding a malicious script in a seemingly harmless invoice PDF. Ava flagged it instantly. She traced the header. It was bouncing through a server in Estonia. But the signature of the code was distinct. It used a specific variable naming convention she had seen on dark web forums. She called Dante. He arrived in the server room 2 minutes later, Marco flanking him. What do you have? Dante asked. Someone is phishing, Ava said, pointing at the screen. They are trying to inject a keystroke logger into your accounts receivable department. If they get in, they will see every transfer you make. Can you stop it? Marco asked, his hand drifting instinctively to his belt. Ava hesitated. She could block it. That was the safe play. But she looked at the code again. She saw the return address the malware was trying to report back to. I can do better than stop it, Ava said. Her heart beat faster. This is coming from a server leased by a shell company linked to the Black Harbor cartel. But the code looks like it was stolen from a toolkit the Kovac crew uses. So they are trying to frame Kovac? Dante asked, his eyes narrowing. Or they are just lazy, Ava said, but we can use that. I can accept the packet, strip out the payload so it cannot hurt us, and then feed it false data. I can make the malware think it succeeded. And what data will you feed it? Dante asked, a slow smile forming on his lips. I can send them a list of shipping coordinates, Ava said, but instead of your shipment, I will give them the coordinates for a Kovac crew drop-off that I found in the public police scanner archives. Dante laughed. It was a genuine, dark sound of delight. You are going to send the Black Harbor men to raid a Kovac shipment. I am just redirecting the traffic, Ava said, trying to sound detached. Do it, Dante ordered. 2 hours later, reports came in over the police scanners. A firefight had broken out at a warehouse in the Lower East Side. 2 rival gangs had clashed over a shipment of stolen electronics. Police had arrived and made 12 arrests. Dante's shipment had arrived at its destination untouched. That night, the atmosphere in the safe house was electric. Dante insisted on a celebration. He took the inner circle, Marco, Sofia, and a few other lieutenants, to a private lounge he owned in the city center. It was a place of velvet ropes, low lights, and people who wore watches that cost more than Ava's entire student loan debt. Ava sat in the corner of a leather booth, feeling woefully underdressed in her office cardigan and slacks. She nursed a sparkling water, watching the room. Women in glittering dresses laughed with men in sharp suits. Music thumped, a heavy, sensual bass line that vibrated in her chest. She felt like an imposter. She was a girl who fixed routers and ate instant noodles. These people were apex predators. She looked up and found Dante watching her. He was standing near the bar, holding a tumbler of amber liquid. He was not looking at the dancers or the wealthy associates trying to get his attention. He was looking straight at her, his gaze intense and unreadable. He walked over, sliding into the booth next to her. The proximity of him was overwhelming. He radiated heat and a sense of dangerous power. "You look like you are analyzing the structural integrity of the drywall," Dante said. "I do not fit in here," Ava admitted, clutching her glass. "I feel like I'm waiting for security to escort me out again." "You are the most valuable person in this room," Dante said quietly. "Tonight. You moved armies without lifting a weapon. You saved my men from a fight and took 2 of my enemies off the board. Do not undervalue yourself. Ava." "It felt wrong," Ava whispered. "It was too easy. I just typed a few lines of code, and people got arrested. Maybe people got hurt." Dante turned his body toward her, shielding her from the rest of the room. "That is the world. Ava. It is wolves and sheep. You have been a sheep your whole life, waiting for the shepherd to protect you. But the shepherd does not care. Tonight, you decided to be a wolf. I do not want to be a wolf," she said. "I just want to survive." "Survival is a wolf's game," he countered. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened instantly. The relaxed charm vanished, replaced by cold alertness. "We need to go," he said, standing up. "Back to the office, now." The mood shifted instantly. Marco appeared at Dante's elbow, scanning the exits. They moved out of the club in a tight formation, Ava sandwiched between them. The drive back to the industrial district was fast and silent. When they arrived at the shipping office, the lights were low. They went straight to Dante's office on the top floor. It had large windows overlooking the shipping yard. Dante threw his jacket on a chair and loosened his tie. "Show me the logs from the Kovac raid," Dante told Ava. "I want to know who was arrested." Ava opened her laptop on his desk. She was logging into the secure server when the glass window behind Dante shattered. The sound was like an explosion. Dante moved before Ava even registered what had happened. He tackled her, his arm sweeping her off the chair and driving her down to the floor behind the heavy oak desk. "Down," he roared. Gunfire erupted from the street below. Bullets tore through the room, shredding the curtains, smashing the expensive liquor bottles on the shelf, and thudding into the plaster walls. Ava curled into a ball, covering her head, screaming silently. The noise was deafening. The alarm system blared, a high-pitched shriek that mixed with the staccato pop of automatic weapons. "Stay down," Dante yelled over the noise. He had a gun in his hand. She had not even seen him draw it. He was pressed close to her, his body a heavy shield between her and the window. "Who is it?" Ava gasped, dust and plaster falling on her hair. "Retaliation," Dante growled, "a drive-by. Probably a splinter group from the Kovac crew who figured out we played them." The firing was relentless. Ava could hear shouting from the hallway as Marco's team returned fire from the lower levels. "Ava," Dante said, grabbing her shoulder. His grip was tight, grounding. "Can you access the external cameras from here?" Ava looked at her laptop. It had fallen on the floor next to them. "Still open, yes," she choked out. "Get me eyes," Dante commanded. "I need to know where they are positioned so Marco does not walk into a kill box." Ava reached for the laptop, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hit the keys. She dragged the computer into the cover of the desk. She took a breath, trying to block out the sound of the bullets destroying the room above her head. Focus, just code, input, output. She typed the override command. The screen flickered, and then the external security feeds popped up. "I see them," Ava yelled. "A van. South gate. 3 shooters. They are pinning down the main entrance. Marco is trying to flank from the east, but he cannot see them. Tell him, Dante said. Use the internal comms. Ava patched into the tactical channel. Marco, South Gate. 3 shooters behind the blue container. Do not go east. Go through the garage. Copy that. Voice in the sky. Marco's voice crackled over the laptop speakers, sounding breathless but calm. On the screen. Ava watched as the security team shifted. They moved through the garage, coming up behind the attacker's van. She saw the muzzle flashes on the screen before she heard the change in the gunfire outside. Within seconds, the attacking van screeched away, tires smoking, leaving one of their own behind on the pavement. Clear, Marco shouted over the comms. They are running. Silence fell over the office, heavy and ringing. The only sound was the wail of the alarm and the crunch of broken glass underfoot. Ava sat frozen against the leg of the desk, her chest heaving. She felt like she couldn't get enough air. Her entire body was vibrating. Dante holstered his gun. He turned to her, his face smeared with dust. Are you hit? He asked, his voice urgent. Ava shook her head, unable to speak. She held up her hands. They were trembling uncontrollably. Dante reached out and took her hands in his. His palms were rough, calloused, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. He checked her arms, turning them over to look for cuts from the flying glass. You did good, he said, his voice dropping to a murmur. You kept your head. Ava looked up at him. They were kneeling on the floor in the wreckage of his office. The adrenaline was starting to crash, leaving her lightheaded. She looked at the stubble on his jaw, the dark circles of fatigue under his eyes, the sheer intensity of his focus on her. I thought, Ava stammered, I thought we were dead. Dante shifted, moving closer. He reached up and brushed a piece of drywall dust out of her hair. His fingers lingered near her temple. I told you, he said softly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. I did not bring you here to die, Ava. The tenderness in his voice broke something inside her. The fear, the stress of the firing, the weeks of isolation, it all crested. A sob caught in her throat. She leaned forward, seeking reassurance, seeking proof that she was still alive. Dante met her. He pulled her into him, his arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest. It was a hard, desperate embrace. She buried her face in the crook of his neck, smelling the gunpowder and the sandalwood. She could feel his heart hammering against her ribs, a rapid, heavy rhythm that matched her own. For a moment, they just breathed, clinging to each other in the ruins. It was intimate in a way that terrified her more than the bullets. It was not just protection. It was a recognition. Ava pulled back slowly, her hands resting on his chest. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, realizing exactly how close they were. Realizing that for the last 10 seconds, she had felt safer in the arms of a Mafia boss than she had felt anywhere else in her life. Dante stared at her, his expression raw, stripped of its usual calculated mask. His hand cupped the back of her neck, his thumb grazing her pulse point. Ava. He started. A warning or a question. She couldn't tell. She pulled away sharply, scrambling to her feet, her face burning. I need to check the servers, she stammered, backing toward the door. I need to make sure the physical lines were not cut. Dante remained on the floor for a second longer, watching her retreat. Then he stood up, the mask sliding back into place, though his eyes remained dark and stormy. Go, he said quietly. Marco will escort you home when the perimeter is secure. Ava fled the room, her heart pounding not from the gunfire, but from the terrifying realization that she did not want to leave. Over the next 2 months, the rhythm of Ava Nguyen's life fractured into 2 distinct, incompatible realities. By day, she was a ghost in the machine of Harbor City. She rode the number 12 bus to the market, squeezing past tired nurses and students, her headphones playing true crime podcasts to drown out the noise. She bought bok choy and ginger for her mother, haggled over the price of fish, and paid her utility bills online like any other struggling 20-something. She looked exhausted, wearing oversized hoodies and no makeup, blending into the gray background of the urban sprawl. By night, however, she was the architect of an invisible fortress. Inside the nondescript shipping office in the industrial district, Ava had transformed Dante Romano's operation. The messy, patched-together network she had first encountered was gone. In its place was a sleek, redundant system of encrypted servers and decentralized nodes. She had automated the backup protocols so that data was mirrored in 3 different countries simultaneously. She had built secure communication channels for Dante's inner circle, Marco, Sofia, and the field captains, that utilized ephemeral keys, making their chats impossible to intercept and impossible to recover once deleted. But her role had evolved beyond mere technical support. Dante had started calling her into the strategy room, a soundproofed glass box where maps of the city were spread out like war plans. "I am thinking of moving the shipment through the South Tunnel," Dante said one Tuesday evening, tracing a line on the map with a heavy gold pen. Ava, standing by the door with her tablet, shook her head without looking up from her screen. "You cannot use the South Tunnel," she said. The Department of Transportation just updated their traffic camera firmware. They added license plate readers that upload to a federal database in real time. "If you drive 3 trucks through there at 2 in the morning, the algorithm will flag it as a convoy." Dante looked at her, then at Marco. "The bridge." "Then?" Dante asked her. "The bridge is clear," Ava confirmed. "The cameras there are on a maintenance loop between 3 and 4 in the morning. You have a 45-minute window where you are invisible." Dante nodded, a flicker of appreciation in his dark eyes. It was not just that she knew the tech, she was learning how he thought. She was learning to anticipate the friction points of his world. Yet, this competence came with a heavy price. Ava began to dread the morning news. She would sit in her cramped kitchen, drinking cheap instant coffee, and watch the local reports on her phone. Police raid in the warehouse district yields 20 kilos of narcotics. Shootout on the interstate leaves 2 hospitalized. She knew these were not random events. These were the ripples caused by the stones she threw. When she exposed a rival's supply line to an anonymous tip line, she was not just moving data. She was sending men with guns to kick down doors. One rainy afternoon, she sat in Dante's office while he reviewed a ledger. The silence was comfortable, but her mind was loud. "Dante," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet. He looked up, setting his pen down. "Yes, Ava? Is this better?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at the screens on the wall. "We help you hurt the Kovac crew. We help you hurt the cartel. But you are just another crew. Are we really making anything safer? Or am I just helping you win a turf war?" Dante leaned back in his leather chair. He did not get angry. He did not dismiss her. He studied her with a serious, almost weary expression. "I am not a saint, Ava. I never claimed to be. I sell vices. I run numbers. I move things that the law says should not be moved. Then what is the point?" Ava asked, the guilt rising in her throat. "I got into this to pay my bills, but I feel like I'm losing my soul. The Kovac crew sells fentanyl to high schoolers," Dante said, his voice dropping, becoming hard as stone. "The Black Harbor cartel traffics women. They put them in containers and ship them like produce." He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the edge near her. "I have rules, Ava. No schools, no kids, no flesh trade. If someone in my organization touches those lines, Marco handles them. Permanently?" He looked down at her, his gaze intense. "If I disappear, the vacuum does not remain empty. Kovac takes over, the cartel takes over, and the rules disappear. We are holding the line, Ava. It is a gray, ugly line, but it protects the people who cannot protect themselves." Ava looked at him. She wanted to argue, but she saw the conviction in his eyes. He believed it, and terrifyingly, she was starting to believe it too. The fragility of her double life shattered on a Thursday night. Ava was at home, sitting cross-legged on her sofa, her laptop balanced on her knees. She was debugging a script for Sofia that would automatically scrub metadata from legal contracts. The television was playing a cooking show in the background, a rare moment of domestic normalcy. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, expecting a text from her mother or maybe a service alert from her internet provider. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Ava Nguyen? Apartment 4, B," Cute curtains. The world stopped. The blood drained from Ava's face so fast she felt dizzy. She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. A second text bubbled up. Dante cannot hide you forever. We are coming to say hello. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. They knew her name. They knew where she lived. They knew she was working for Dante. Her first thought was not for herself. "Mom," she whispered. Her fingers flew over the phone screen, dialing her mother's number. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. "Answer, answer, please answer," Ava begged, pacing her small living room, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Hello?" Lynn's voice was cheerful, accompanied by the background noise of hair dryers and chatter. "Mom," Ava gasped, gripping the phone. "Where are you? I am at the shop." "Honey," Lynn said, "we are closing up soon." "Why? You sound out of breath. Are you okay?" "I am fine." Ava lied, her voice shaking. "Listen to me. Close the shop now. Go straight home, lock the door. Do not stop for groceries. Do not talk to anyone." "Ava, what is wrong? You are scaring me. Just do it, Mom, please. I heard there is some trouble in the neighborhood. Just go home. I will call you in an hour." She hung up before her mother could ask more questions. She stood in the center of her apartment, feeling the walls closing in. She had to leave. She had to run. But where? A heavy pounding on her front door made her jump, a scream dying in her throat. She backed away, grabbing a kitchen knife from the counter, her hands trembling violently. "Ava, open the door. It is me." It was Dante. She rushed to the door, peering through the peephole. He was there, looking furious and terrified, wearing a long, dark coat. Behind him, she could see Marco scanning the hallway. She unlocked the locks and threw the door open. Dante stepped inside and immediately kicked the door shut, locking it behind him. He looked at her, taking in the knife in her hand, her pale face, the laptop on the sofa. "Pack a bag," he ordered. His voice was not the smooth baritone she was used to. It was a command. "What?" Ava asked, still reeling. "My network picked up chatter 20 minutes ago," Dante said, moving to the window and peering through the blinds. "The Kovac crew bought a data packet from a broker. They have your identity. They know you are the one hurting them." "I got a text," Ava whispered. "I know," Dante said grimly. "That was their warning shot. The next one will be real lead. You have 5 minutes. Get your essentials. You are not staying here tonight." "No," Ava said, the shock turning into defensive anger. "I cannot just leave. My lease. My things." "Your lease does not matter if you are dead," Dante snapped, turning on her. "Do you understand what these people do, Ava? They do not just kill you, they make an example of you." "I will go to a hotel," Ava said, backing away. "I will go to the police." "The police?" Dante let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "Half the precinct is on the cartel's payroll. If you walk into a station, you will be in a holding cell for 10 minutes before the cameras turn off and something unfortunate happens to you." "Then I will leave the city," Ava shouted. "I will take my mom and go." "And go where?" Dante stepped closer, looming over her. "You think you can outrun a digital footprint? You think you can hide from people with unlimited resources? They will find you, Ava. And because you are alone, they will hurt you to get to me. Or worse, they will use you to destroy everything we have built." "We?" Ava yelled, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "There is no we. You dragged me into this. I was just a tech support girl. You came to the bar. You offered me the money. You put the target on my back. I gave you a choice." Dante roared back, the raw emotion breaking through his composure. "You took the card. Ava, you made the call. Do not pretend you were kidnapped. You walked into the fire because you wanted to burn down the people who humiliated you." The truth of his words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ava stared at him, her chest heaving. He was right. She had chosen this. She had chosen the danger because she was tired of being powerless. "But I won't be your prisoner," she said, her voice quieter but shaking with defiance. "I won't be locked away in some tower like a piece of property." "I am not trying to own you," Dante said, his voice softening, the anger draining out to reveal a desperate fear. "I am trying to keep you alive." He reached out, his hand hovering near her arm but not touching her. "Please, Ava." If something happens to you, I cannot allow that." She looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in his face. She saw the genuine terror in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. It was the same look he had given her on the floor of his office during the shooting. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Defeated. I have a building downtown," Dante said. "The penthouse is secure. Biometric access, bulletproof glass, private security in the lobby. You will have your own wing. You can come and go, but only with an escort." Ava looked around her small, crappy apartment. It was not much, but it was hers. And now, it was a crime scene waiting to happen. "Okay," she whispered. The penthouse was less of an apartment and more of a fortress disguised as a luxury home. It occupied the entire top floor of a steel and glass spire overlooking the harbor. The floors were marble, the furniture was Italian leather, and the view was breathtaking. But to Ava, it felt cold. She had spent the day directing Marco's team on how to physically relocate the critical servers to a bunker in the building's basement. She had spent hours encrypting the new location. Now, it was 9 in the evening, and she was exhausted deep in her bones. She sat at the kitchen island, which was larger than her entire previous bathroom. She was eating takeout noodles from a carton. Dante walked in. He had shed his coat and jacket. He was wearing a black t-shirt and gray trousers, looking more human than the suit-clad boss she usually saw. He walked to the kettle and poured hot water into 2 mugs. He placed a tea bag in each. Jasmine, her favorite. He must have noticed her drinking it at the office. He slid 1 mug across the marble counter to her. "Did you call your mother?" he asked quietly. Ava nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "I told her I got a job promotion that required me to travel for a few weeks. I sent her enough money to close the shop for a month. I told her to go visit her sister in Portland. That is good," Dante said. "Portland is safe. We have no enemies there." He took a sip of his tea, leaning against the counter. "I am sorry about your apartment," he said. "I know it was home." "It had a leak in the bathroom ceiling and the radiator clanked," Ava said with a tired smile. "But nobody tried to kill me there. Until today." Dante looked down into his tea. The guilt was etched plainly on his face. Ava realized that for all his power, for all his talk of wolves and sheep, he carried the weight of every life he touched. "Thank you," she said softly. Dante looked up, surprised. "For what? Ruining your life?" "For saving it," she said. "And for the tea." A silence settled between them. It was not the tense, charged silence of the office. It was softer, domestic. They were just 2 tired people hiding from the storm they had created. Later that night, the weather turned. A storm rolled in off the ocean, battering the floor-to-ceiling windows with sheets of rain. The city lights below smeared into abstract streaks of gold and red. Ava was in the living area, which had been converted into a temporary command center. Her laptop was open on the low coffee table. Papers were scattered across the rug. Dante was sitting on the floor next to her, reviewing the blueprints for a Kovac warehouse they planned to expose the next day. The proximity was unavoidable. "We need to make sure the timestamps on the leaked photos match the metadata," Ava said, pointing to a file on the screen. "If the FBI sees a discrepancy, they will know it is a setup." Dante leaned in closer to see the screen. "Show me." Ava reached for the trackpad to zoom in. At the same moment, Dante reached for the file folder sitting next to the computer. Their hands brushed. It was a light contact, fingers grazing knuckles, but the effect was electric. Ava froze. Dante froze. Neither of them pulled away. Ava turned her head slowly to look at him. He was inches away. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She could see the faint scar on his chin. She could hear the rhythm of his breathing, which had suddenly gone shallow. The rain lashed against the glass, enclosing them in a world that consisted only of this room, this rug, and the heat radiating between them. The fear of the day, the text message, the knife in her hand, the frantic packing seemed to evaporate, replaced by a different kind of intensity. A hunger. "Dante," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. He looked at her mouth, then back to her eyes. His expression was a war between restraint and desire. He was the boss. She was the employee. He was the danger. She was the one he had sworn to protect, but the line had blurred a long time ago. Ava. "You should tell me to stop," he murmured, his voice rough. Ava didn't speak. She didn't want him to stop. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of the cold logic of servers and firewalls. She wanted something real. She wanted to feel the fire that she had been dancing around for months. She leaned in. Dante hesitated for a heartbeat, a final second of resistance, and then he broke. He met her halfway. His lips crashed against hers, not tentative or gentle, but with a desperate, starving intensity. It was a kiss born of adrenaline and weeks of unspoken longing. Ava gasped against his mouth, her hands flying up to grip the fabric of his t-shirt, pulling him closer. Dante groaned low in his throat. His hand came up to cradle the side of her neck, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw, holding her like she was something precious and fragile that he was terrified of breaking. The kiss deepened, becoming slow and consuming. His tongue swept against hers, tasting of jasmine tea and urgency. Ava felt a surge of heat coil in her stomach. She pressed her body against his, needing to feel the solidity of him, the proof that he was here and he was hers in this moment. Dante shifted, moving so that he was looming over her slightly, shielding her even here, in the safety of the penthouse. He broke the kiss to breathe, resting his forehead against hers. His eyes were closed, his lashes dark against his cheek. "I should not do this," he whispered, his voice ragged. "You are in enough danger." Ava opened her eyes, breathless, her lips swollen and tingling. She reached up and ran her fingers through his hair, grounding him. "Then don't stop," she said. Dante opened his eyes. The look he gave her was scorching. He captured her lips again, softer this time, a promise and a plea, as the rain continued to pound against the glass, sealing them together in the dark. The air in the penthouse was thick enough to choke on. For 3 days, ever since the storm and the kiss that had shattered the professional boundaries between them, Ava and Nguyen and Dante Romano had existed in a state of excruciating, polite tension. They moved around each other like two magnets with the same polarity, constantly repelling whenever they got too close, terrified of the snap that would happen if they flipped. Ava buried herself in the code. It was safer there. She spent 18 hours a day in front of her triple monitor setup, her eyes burning, hunting for ghosts in the network. Dante was no better. He spent his time in the study, pacing while on encrypted calls, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the walls. When they did interact, passing a tablet back and forth, pouring coffee in the kitchen, their fingers were careful not to touch. The glances they exchanged when the other wasn't looking were heavy with unspoken words, a mixture of desire and regret that hung over the apartment like a storm cloud. But the silence of the room was deceiving. Outside, the digital noise was deafening. On Tuesday morning, Ava noticed the pattern. She was running a heuristic scan on the communications nodes Dante used to coordinate with his shipping captains when she saw it. It was not the clumsy, brute force banging of the Kovac crew, nor was it the slippery, malware-heavy intrusion of the cartel. This was clean. It was surgical. "Dante," Ava said. Her voice cracked from disuse. He was at the kitchen island, reviewing a ledger. He looked up immediately, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her stomach flip. "What is it?" he asked. Ava turned the monitor toward him. "Look at the packet loss on Node 4. It is not dropping data. It is being mirrored. Someone has tapped the undersea cable coming into the harbor." Dante walked over, standing behind her chair. He smelled of espresso and that distinct sandalwood soap, a scent that now made Ava's heart race for all the wrong reasons. "Who has that kind of access?" Dante asked. "That is physical infrastructure. You need a warrant to tap that line." "Exactly," Ava said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "This is not a rival gang. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Dante went still. He leaned in, staring at the cascading lines of code. "Agent Hart," he muttered. "She is tightening the noose. She's doing more than that, Ava said grimly. This is a deep packet inspection. They are not just looking for keywords anymore. They are mapping the entire social graph of your organization. They are trying to build a RICO case. Dante, they are looking for the link that ties the money to the man. Can you block them? I can encrypt the traffic, Ava said. I can wrap the data in so much noise that it will take their supercomputers 50 years to crack it, but I cannot stop them from watching. They know you are moving something big. Dante straightened up, his jaw set in a hard line. Then we move it sooner. Tell Marco to prep the logistics for tonight. The atmosphere shifted from awkward tension to military precision. For the next 6 hours, the penthouse became a command center. Ava routed and rerouted data, creating digital smokescreens to blind the FBI's new surveillance tools. Then, the floor dropped out. At 4 p.m, the elevator doors slid open. Sophia walked in. Usually, the strategist was calm, her face a mask of bored competence. Today, she looked furious. She did not look at Dante. She looked straight at Ava. We have a problem, Sophia said, throwing a tablet onto the coffee table. It skidded across the glass surface and stopped inches from Ava's hand. What happened? Dante asked, stepping between the two women. The shell company in the Caymans, Sophia said, her voice dripping with acid. The one holding the liquidity for the pension fund, it was drained an hour ago. $2 million, transferred to an untraceable account in Zurich, and the ledger was published to a public journalist forum. Dante turned to Sophia. That account was air-gapped. Only 3 people had the keys. You, me, and... He stopped. He turned slowly to look at Ava. Ava felt the blood drain from her face. She reached for the tablet. That is impossible. I secured that encryption myself. Sophia crossed her arms. Look at the access logs. Ava tapped the screen. She pulled up the audit trail. Her breath hitched. There, in black and white, was the login credential. User _Nguyen. Timestamp 14 o'clock hours. It says I authorized the transfer, Ava whispered. Dante took the tablet from her hand. He stared at the screen for a long time. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the server stack in the corner. Dante, Ava said, standing up. Her legs felt shaky. You know I did not do this. Do I? Dante asked. He did not look at her. He was staring at the log, his expression unreadable. I was sitting right here, Ava cried, gesturing to her workstation. I was building the firewall against the FBI. You have 3 remote terminals running, Sophia pointed out coldly. You could have run a script in the background. It would take 10 seconds. Why would I do that? Ava demanded, her voice rising. Maybe you realize the feds are closing in, Sophia said. Maybe you decided $2 million was a nice severance package before you cut a deal with Agent Hart. That is a lie, Ava shouted. She turned to Dante, desperate. Dante, look at me. You know me. I am the one who told you the FBI was watching. Why would I steal from you? Dante finally looked up. His eyes were dark, clouded with a mixture of anger and a terrible, wounding hesitation. The credentials are yours. Ava, Dante said quietly. The encryption key was generated from your laptop. It was spoofed, Ava insisted. Someone cloned my session ID. To clone a session ID on this network, they would need physical access to your machine, Dante said. Or they would need you to give it to them. Ava felt like she had been slapped. He doubted her. After everything, after the late nights, the saved shipments, the moment in the rain where she had let him see her soul, he still saw her as a potential liability. He still saw her as a stranger. You think I did this, she whispered. I think the evidence is right there, Dante said, his voice hard, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of conflict. And until I know for sure, I cannot trust you with the system. He reached out and took her laptop from the table. He closed it. Marco will escort you to your room, Dante said. We will keep you there until we verify the source of the transfer? Lock me up? Ava laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. You are going to put me in a cell? It is for your own safety, Dante said. My safety? Ava shook her head, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes. No, this is not about safety. This is about control. You never trusted me. You just used me. Ava, Be reasonable, Dante warned, stepping closer. I am done being reasonable, Ava snapped. She grabbed her backpack from the floor. I am not your prisoner, Dante, and I am not your mole. I quit. She turned for the elevator. If you walk out that door, Dante called out, his voice echoing in the large room, I cannot protect you. The FBI is watching. The Kovac crew is hunting. You will be on your own. I have been on my own my whole life, Ava shot back, hitting the call button. I would rather take my chances with the wolves than stay with a man who looks at me like I am a thief. The elevator doors opened. Ava stepped inside. She looked at Dante one last time. He was standing in the center of his empire, holding her laptop, looking like he wanted to stop her, looking like he wanted to scream, but he didn't move. The doors slid shut, severing the connection. 3 days later, Ava was sitting in a coffee shop in her old neighborhood, trying to make $5 last for 3 hours. She had returned to the real world, but it felt like a costume she no longer knew how to wear. She wore jeans and a faded sweater. She had tied her hair back. She looked like just another unemployed tech worker scrolling through freelance gigs on a borrowed tablet, but her nerves were shot. Every time the door chime rang, she flinched. Every time a car slowed down outside, her hand drifted to the pepper spray in her pocket. She had found a small sublet in a different borough, paying cash, trying to stay off the grid. It was miserable. She missed the hum of the high-end servers. She missed the challenge. God help her. She missed him. She hated herself for it. She hated him for doubting her. But every time she closed her eyes, she felt the phantom pressure of his hand on her neck, the desperate heat of that kiss in the storm. She checked the time. 6 in the evening. Her mother had returned from Portland 2 days ago, stubborn and refusing to stay away from her nail salon any longer. Ava had argued, but Lynn Nguyen was a force of nature. Ava needed to go help her close up the shop. She packed her bag and walked the 6 blocks to the salon. The autumn air was crisp, biting. The leaves skittered across the pavement. She noticed a gray van parked across the street from the salon. It was marked Prestige Cleaning Services. Ava slowed her pace. Her instincts, honed by months in Dante's world, flared up. Why would a cleaning service be working at 6 on a Friday? She reached the salon gate. Her mother was inside, wiping down the pedicure chairs. Ava. Lynn called out, waving through the glass. Ava forced a smile. She unlocked the metal gate, her keys jangling. Mom, hurry up, Ava called back. I want to get out of here. She turned to pull the gate shut. The movement was a blur in her peripheral vision. 2 men stepped out from the alleyway next to the shop. They wore heavy work jackets and baseball caps pulled low. Ava opened her mouth to scream, but a rough, gloved hand clamped over her face before the sound could escape. Chemical smell. Chloroform? No, just dirty leather and sweat. Don't make a sound, a voice hissed in her ear. Ava kicked backward, driving her heel into a shin. The man grunted, but didn't let go. He dragged her backward, her feet scraping uselessly against the concrete. Ava! Her mother shouted from the doorway. Ava saw her mother rush out, eyes wide with terror. Mom, run! Ava tried to scream, but the hand muffled it to a pathetic whimper. The side door of the gray van slid open. The men lifted her off her feet. She grabbed at the door frame, her fingernails tearing against the metal. But they were too strong. They shoved her inside onto the metal floor. The door slammed shut. Plunging her into darkness. Drive, one of the men shouted. The van lurched forward, tires squealing. Ava scrambled to her knees, gasping for air. She looked up. 3 men were in the back with her. One of them, a man with a shaved head and a neck tattoo of a scorpion, leaned down. You are the computer girl, he said, grinning. You are the one who cost us 2 shipments. Kovac sends his regards, another man said, zip-tying her hands behind her back. Ava's heart hammered so hard she thought it would burst. She forced herself to breathe. Panic is death. Panic is death. Where are you taking me? She asked, her voice trembling but audible. Somewhere quiet, the scorpion man said. The boss wants to ask you some questions about Romano's bank accounts. And then he wants to see how well you type without fingers. The men laughed. Ava closed her eyes. She focused on the motion of the van. Left turn, accelerating, hitting potholes, industrial district. We are heading toward the docks. She started counting seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. She had to keep her mind sharp. She had to find an opening. She was at 340 seconds when the world exploded. A massive impact slammed into the side of the van. The metal shrieked, buckling inward. Ava was thrown across the compartment, hitting her shoulder against a tool chest. The van spun violently, tires screaming against the asphalt, before tipping onto 2 wheels and crashing back down with a bone-jarring thud. The back doors flew open. The lock shattered by the impact. Light flooded in. Dante's men were there before the Kovac crew could even draw their weapons. Marco was first, dragging the Scorpion Man out by his collar and throwing him onto the pavement like a rag doll. Then Dante was there. He scrambled into the back of the wrecked van. He looked like a demon. His suit was torn. His knuckles were bloody, and his eyes were wide with a terrified fury that stole the breath from Ava's lungs. "Ava!" he roared. He crawled over the debris to reach her. He grabbed her shoulders, hauling her upright. "Are you hurt? Look at me. Are you hurt?" Ava shook her head, dazed. I think I am okay. My shoulder." Dante pulled a knife from his belt. For a split second, Ava flinched, but he spun her around and slashed the zip ties on her wrists with a single, precise motion. He grabbed her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. His hands were shaking violently. There was blood on his thumb, not hers. His, "I told you they would come." He choked out, his voice raw. "I told you." He didn't wait for an answer. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. He gripped her so tight it hurt, but Ava didn't care. She wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing into his ruined suit. "I got you," he whispered fiercely. "I got you." The ride to the safe house was a blur of neon lights and silence. Ava sat in the back of Dante's armored SUV, wrapped in a blanket. Dante sat next to her, not touching her, staring out the window with a look of black despair. The safe house was a brownstone in the quietest part of the city. Marco cleared the perimeter and left them alone in the library on the ground floor. The room was dim, lit only by a street lamp outside. Ava sat on a velvet sofa, still shivering as the adrenaline left her system, leaving her cold and hollow. Dante poured a glass of brandy. He brought it to her. His hand was steady now, but his eyes were haunted. "Drink," he said gently. "It will help the shock." Ava took the glass. She took a sip. The burn of the alcohol woke her up. She looked at him. He was standing by the fireplace, looking at the floor. "You came," she whispered. "I never stopped watching you," Dante admitted, his voice low. "I had a tail on you from the moment you left the penthouse. I told them to keep their distance so you wouldn't spot them." "You knew where I was?" Ava asked. "Of course I knew," Dante said, looking up. "Do you think I would just let you walk away? You let me quit," Ava said. "You accused me of stealing." "I was wrong," Dante said. The words hung in the air. A Mafia boss did not apologize, but Dante Romano looked defeated. Sophia traced the spoof. He continued. "It was a mirrored signal. They bounced it off your old laptop, the one you left at NeoLedger months ago. They used your digital ghost to frame you. It was meant to make me distrust you. It was meant to separate us." "And it worked," Ava said softly. "Yes," Dante said. "It worked. And because I was a fool, because I let my paranoia win, you were almost—" He couldn't finish the sentence. He turned away, bracing his hand against the mantelpiece. "I saw them grab you," he said, his voice cracking. "On the live feed. I was 3 minutes away. Those were the longest 3 minutes of my life. Ava." Ava stood up. She set the glass down. She walked across the room. She reached out and touched his back. He flinched, then turned around. "You saved me," Ava said. "I almost got you killed," Dante corrected. He looked at her, his eyes searching her face for any sign of hatred, but he didn't find it. Ava stepped closer. She saw the blood on his knuckles where he must have hit something or someone in his rage. She took his hand, lifting it to her lips. She kissed the bruised skin. Dante let out a shuddering breath. "I am so sorry, Ava," he whispered. "Don't," she said, "just Don't let me go again." Dante made a sound that was half groan, half prayer. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into him. This was not the desperate, heated kiss of the storm. This was slow. It was heavy with relief and a terrifying realization of how much they had to lose. He kissed her forehead, her eyelids, her cheeks. He held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. When his lips finally found hers, it was tender. It was a promise. Ava melted into him, feeling the warmth of his body seep into hers, driving away the cold memory of the van. "You are safe," Dante murmured against her mouth. "I swear on my life. Ava, you are safe." And for the first time in days, Ava believed him, but she also knew that safety was an illusion. The war had just begun, and they were standing in the eye of the storm. The silence in the safe house library was heavy, but it was no longer the silence of estrangement. It was the silence of two people moving in perfect synchronization. For the last 48 hours, Dante Romano had given Ava Nguyen the keys to his kingdom. He had unlocked every digital door he owned. There were no more redacted files, no more off-limit servers, and no more secrets. He sat in a wingback chair, watching her work at the long oak table. His trust in her, absolute. Ava's eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but her mind was razor-sharp. She was cross-referencing the metadata from the mirrored hack that had framed her with Dante's internal communication logs. "I found it," Ava whispered. Dante was at her side in a second. "Show me." Ava pointed to a string of code on her monitor. The spoofed login that transferred the money did not come from the outside. It was routed through a VPN, but the user got lazy. They used a legacy authentication token to bypass the two-factor request. "English, Ava," Dante said, his hand resting on the back of her chair. "The person who framed me had to be someone who has been in your system since before I updated the security protocols," Ava explained. "Someone who had an old key that I had not revoked yet because I thought only you and your top 3 captains had it." She hid a key, revealing a name associated with the digital signature. "Lorenzo." Dante stared at the screen. His expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lorenzo was his oldest captain. He ran the waterfront operations. He had eaten at Dante's table every Sunday for 5 years. "He's trying to buy his way out," Dante said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "He is feeding intel to the Kovac crew to weaken me, and he is feeding intel to the FBI to buy immunity for himself. He plans to hand them my head on a platter and walk away into witness protection. And he needed a scapegoat to explain the leaks until he was ready to move," Ava added. Realizing the cruelty of the plan, that was me. The expendable IT girl. Dante straightened up, walking to the window. He looked out at the dark street. "He wants to be a witness," Dante said. "Fine. We will give him something to witness." The Harbor City Charity Gala was the social event of the season, held at the sprawling waterfront convention center. It was a place where politicians shook hands with real estate tycoons, and where organized crime figures laundered their reputations alongside their money. The plan was a high-wire act. Ava and Dante were going to walk into the lion's den. They needed the convention center's massive bandwidth and proximity to the harbor's trunk lines to execute a data dump that would be too large to stop once it started. They were going to leak everything. They would release the evidence Ava had gathered on the Kovac crew and the Black Harbor cartel directly to the FBI's central server, bypassing the corrupt local field agents. Simultaneously, they would plan a digital paper trail on Lorenzo's personal cloud account, records that showed him stealing from the cartel to pay off his own debts. By the time the night was over, the FBI would be coming for Kovac, and Kovac would be coming for Lorenzo. Ava adjusted the ID badge clipped to her blazer. It read Netcore Solutions, Event Technician. She wore a simple black headset and carried a ruggedized laptop. She looked exactly like the invisible support staff that kept the lights on and the Wi-Fi running. She walked through the service corridors of the convention center, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Radio check," she whispered into her headset. "Loud and clear. Marco's voice replied. He was positioned in the security control room. Having quietly bribed the night shift supervisor, Dante was already on the floor. Ava caught a glimpse of him through a gap in the ballroom curtains. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like armor. He held a flute of champagne, smiling at a city councilman, looking every inch the wealthy philanthropist. He looked devastatingly handsome, but Ava knew that under the jacket, he was armed, and under the smile, he was waiting for a war. Ava slipped into the main server closet located behind the catering kitchen. It was cool and hummed with the sound of fans. A catering staff member, a young guy balancing a tray of shrimp, nearly bumped into her. "Whoops, watch it," he said. "You the Wi-Fi lady?" "The internet is slow in the VIP lounge. I am rebooting the nodes now." Ava lied smoothly, forcing a smile. "Just give me 5 minutes and they will be streaming in 4K. Thanks, Wi-Fi lady." He bustled away. Ava locked the door behind him and sat on a plastic crate. She opened her laptop and jacked directly into the main line. "Okay, Dante," she murmured into the mic. I am mirroring the traffic now." On her screen, the digital life of the gala scrolled by. She saw encrypted texts, payment transfers, and emails. She ignored it all. She initiated the scripts she had written in the safe house. "Package 1 is uploading to the FBI secure drop," she said. "Package 2 is being planted on Lorenzo's server. We have 10 minutes before the upload completes. Hold tight." Dante's voice came through her earpiece, low and steady. "Lorenzo just walked in." Ava's fingers froze for a fraction of a second. She typed faster. 30 minutes later, the progress bar was at 80%. Ava needed air. The server closet was becoming claustrophobic. She checked the hallway. Clear. She slipped out and made her way up a service stairwell to the mezzanine balcony. It was a secluded spot, away from the main crowd, overlooking the harbor where the city lights danced on the black water. She leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath of the salty air. "You are supposed to be hiding." She turned. Dante stepped out of the shadows. He had loosened his tie slightly. He walked over to her, standing close enough that his arm brushed hers. "The upload is slow," Ava said. "The gala guests are hogging the bandwidth. I came up to bridge the signal to the cellular tower." Dante looked at her. The neon sign from a nearby hotel illuminated his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw and the fatigue around his eyes. "You look beautiful," he said, "even in the lanyard." Ava looked down at her generic tech uniform. "I look like I'm about to fix a printer." "You look like the only real thing in this entire building," Dante corrected. He turned to look at the water. The silence between them was not heavy. It was filled with the strange, desperate comfort they had found in each other. "Dante," Ava asked quietly, "if this works, if we take down Kovac and expose Lorenzo, what happens next?" Dante sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the bottom of his soul. "We survive. We rebuild." "Can you ever leave?" she asked. "Really leave?" Dante looked at her. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "I want to," he admitted. "I look at this city and all I see are targets and threats. I look at you and I see a life I never thought I could have. A quiet life." "Then take it," Ava whispered. "We can go. We have the money. We have the skills. It is not that simple," Dante said sadly. "In my world, you do not retire. You just stop breathing. If I leave, everyone I ever protected becomes a target, including you." "I am already a target," Ava said. Dante's hand cupped her face. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers. "I will burn this whole city down before I let them touch you again." He swore. He started to lower his head, his lips inches from hers. A shrill beep from Ava's laptop shattered the moment. She jerked back. Opening the lid, a red warning box was flashing on the screen. "Perimeter breach, unauthorized signal detected." Ava went pale. "It is not the FBI," she said, her voice rising in panic. "It is a local mesh network. Someone just jammed the security frequencies." Dante touched his earpiece. "Marco? Report. Static. Dante. Look at the entrance," Ava said, pointing to the surveillance feed on her screen. 3 black SUVs had just pulled up to the valet stand. Men were getting out. They were not wearing tuxedos. They were wearing tactical gear under trench coats. It is the Kovac crew, Dante realized, his hand moving instantly to the gun holstered under his jacket. Lorenzo brought them. He must have realized we were onto him. He grabbed Ava's arm. We have to go. Now. They ran toward the service exit. Before they reached the stairwell, the sound of gunfire erupted from the parking structure below. It was a dull, thudding sound that echoed through the concrete bones of the building. Screams began to drift up from the ballroom. The music cut out. "Ava! How long on the upload?" Dante shouted, pulling her behind a concrete pillar as the fire alarm began to blare. 90%, Ava yelled back. "If I disconnect now, the files will corrupt." "I need 2 minutes. We do not have 2 minutes." Dante peered around the corner. 2 men were sprinting down the hallway toward them. They held suppressed pistols. Dante didn't hesitate. He stepped out, raised his weapon, and fired twice. The lead man dropped. The second scrambled for cover. "Go to the back corridor," Dante ordered, shoving Ava toward the service elevators. "Finish the upload there. I will hold them back." "No," Ava cried. "I am not leaving you. Do your job, Ava," Dante roared, his eyes blazing. "Finish it." He turned and fired again, suppressing the attackers. Ava turned and ran. She sprinted down the long, carpeted hallway, clutching her laptop like a shield. She reached the service area behind the kitchen. It was chaos. Chefs and waiters were cowering under tables. Ava slid into a recessed alcove near the loading dock. She opened the laptop. 95%. Come on, she pleaded. "Hello? It girl." The voice was oily and familiar. Ava spun around. Lorenzo was standing 10 feet away, blocking the exit. He was sweating, his tie undone, holding a heavy silver revolver. He looked desperate and mean. "Lorenzo!" Ava gasped, backing up until her spine hit the wall. "You really are a pest," Lorenzo sneered, stepping closer. "I thought the rumors were exaggerated. A little girl playing with computers. But you actually caused me a lot of trouble." "Ava, you cost me a lot of money. The upload is done." Ava lied, her voice shaking. "The FBI has everything. They know you stole from the cartel." Lorenzo laughed, but his eyes darted nervously to the laptop. "Even if they do, I have an insurance policy. He raised the gun, pointing it at her chest. "Close the laptop. Ava, cancel the transfer, or I will put a bullet in your stomach and watch you bleed out while I smash it myself." Ava hesitated. 98%. "Do it," Lorenzo screamed, cocking the hammer. "Stop!" Dante's voice boomed from the end of the hall. Lorenzo spun around, grabbing Ava by the hair and dragging her in front of him. He pressed the cold barrel of the gun against her temple. Dante froze. He was 20 feet away, his gun raised, his chest heaving. He saw Ava's terrified face, saw the metal against her skin. "Let her go." "Lorenzo," Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. "You are done." "Dante," Lorenzo shouted, saliva flying from his mouth. "Kovac is here. The feds are coming. It is over. I am walking out of here, and I am taking the girl as my ticket." "She is nothing," Dante said, trying to draw Lorenzo's focus. "She is just an employee." "Take me," Lorenzo sneered, tightening his grip on Ava. She yelped in pain. "She is not just an employee, is she? I saw the way you looked at her on the balcony. She is your weakness, and that makes her very valuable." Suddenly, the service doors behind Lorenzo burst open. 3 men from the Kovac crew rushed in, carrying assault rifles. "Grab them!" Lorenzo ordered, dragging Ava backward toward the open doors. Dante lunged forward, desperate. Lorenzo fired blindly. The bullet sparked off the wall inches from Dante's head. Dante returned fire, aiming for Lorenzo's legs, but he couldn't take the shot without risking Ava. "Dante!" Ava screamed, reaching out for him. "I will kill her!" Lorenzo shrieked. "Back off!" The Kovac men unleashed a spray of covering fire, forcing Dante to dive behind a steel cart. Lorenzo hauled Ava through the doors and into the cool night air of the loading dock. A black van was idling there, sliding door open. They threw Ava inside. She kicked and fought, landing a blow on Lorenzo's jaw, but there were too many of them. Lorenzo jumped in after her, slamming the door. Dante scrambled to his feet and sprinted through the doors, ignoring the bullets whizzing past him. He reached the dock just as the van peeled out, tires smoking. He raised his gun and fired at the tires, emptying his clip. Bang, bang. Bang! One tire blew out, but the van kept going, swerving wildly onto the access road and disappearing into the night. Dante stood alone on the loading dock, his chest heaving, his weapon clicking empty. The sirens were deafening now, closing in from all sides. He looked down. Lying on the concrete, where Ava had dropped it in the struggle, was her laptop. The screen was cracked, but the green bar was solid. Upload complete. Dante stared at it. She had done it. She had burned his enemies, but they had taken her. Dante dropped his empty gun. He let out a roar of pure, primal rage that echoed off the warehouse walls, a sound of heartbreak and vengeance that promised death to anyone who stood in his way. He reached for his phone. He dialed Marco. "Get the car," Dante said, his voice devoid of all humanity. "We are going to war." Consciousness returned to Ava Nguyen in a slow, throbbing wave of pain. The first thing she registered was the smell, a thick, cloying mixture of diesel fuel, rotting wood, and the salty tang of the harbor. The second thing was the cold metal of a chair biting into her spine. She opened her eyes. The world was a blurry haze of sodium vapor orange and deep shadows. She was in a warehouse, vast and cavernous, with high windows that were blacked out with grime. The sound of water lapping against pilings echoed from somewhere below, suggesting they were built directly over the river. Her hands were zip-tied behind the chair. Her ankles were taped to the legs. She blinked, trying to clear the fog in her head. Voices drifted toward her from a lit area near a rusted loading bay door. "She is worth more to the feds," a deep, accented voice argued. That was Misha, the lieutenant from the Kovac crew. "If we give them the girl and the encrypted drive, we can negotiate a ceasefire. They want the hacker more than they want the drugs." "You are thinking small, Misha," another voice sneered. It was Lorenzo. Ava felt a surge of cold rage in her gut. "We do not give her to the FBI. We use her to draw Dante out. He's emotional. He is reckless. He will come for her. And when he does, we kill him. Then we take his territory and his codes. He will not come alone." Misha countered. "He will be desperate." Lorenzo insisted. "He is in love with her. It makes him stupid." Ava tested her bonds. They were tight, biting into her wrists. She took a steadying breath. Panic is death. She had to think. She shifted her left wrist. The zip tie was cinched tight, but her sleeves were long, tucked high up on her forearm, hidden beneath the cuff of her thick sweater, was her smartwatch. It was a custom prototype she had built herself, running a stripped-down Linux kernel. The thugs who grabbed her had taken her phone and laptop, but they hadn't patted her down thoroughly enough to find the flat, black disk against her skin. It was a long shot, a desperate shot, but it was all she had. 5 miles away, in the back of an unmarked surveillance van, Dante Romano sat opposite Agent Rachel Hart. The tension in the cramped metal box was palpable. Dante was bleeding from a cut above his eyebrow, and his knuckles were split and raw. He looked like a man who had walked through hell, but his eyes were clear and terrifyingly focused. "I am offering you the crown jewels, Agent Hart," Dante said, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "I am giving you the Kovac crew. I am giving you the Black Harbor cartel, and I am giving you Lorenzo, the mole inside my own house who has been playing us both." Hart studied him. She was a sharp woman with tired eyes who had chased Dante for 3 years. "And in exchange, limited immunity for me," Dante said. "I plead to a lesser charge. Reckless endangerment, information trafficking, no RICO, and total protection for Ava Nguyen. She walks away clean. She was a hostage, not a conspirator." Hart scoffed. "She wrote the code." "Dante, she wrote defensive protocols because I paid her to—" Dante snapped. "She is innocent. If you want the files that will make your career, the files that will dismantle organized crime in Harbor City for a decade, you agree to the deal." Hart tapped her pen on her knee. She looked at the desperate man in front of her. She saw the truth in his face. He wasn't playing a game anymore. He was cashing out. "We need physical evidence," Hart said, "and we need them caught in the act. I will get them in the act," Dante promised. "I know where they took her." My network triangulated her smartwatch signal 2 minutes ago. It is the old cannery on the East River. He leaned forward. I will go in. I will flush them out. You wait for the signal. What signal? Hart asked. When the sky lights up, Dante said grimly. That is the signal. Back in the warehouse. Ava had managed to wiggle the watch down her wrist using the friction of the chair. It was awkward, painful work, contorting her hand until her thumb could brush the small touchscreen. She couldn't see the screen, but she knew the interface by heart. Swipe right, tap top left, voice command active. She waited for a loud burst of laughter from Lorenzo and Misha. Connect to mesh node alpha, she whispered, her head bowed as if she were unconscious. A tiny vibration against her wrist confirmed the connection. She was in. The warehouse had a localized Wi-Fi network for the security cameras, weak, unsecured, and perfect for a backdoor entry. She had access to the internet. Using a series of taps she had memorized, Morse code input she had designed for emergencies, she sent a ping to Dante's secure server. Location confirmed, hostiles, 6, Lorenzo present. Then, she began the second sequence. She couldn't type out code, but she could trigger the executable she had written on the balcony before the ambush. The doomsday script. It was sitting on the cloud, waiting for a trigger. Hey! Lorenzo's voice made her jump. He walked over, grabbing her chin and forcing her head up. She is awake, Lorenzo said, grinning. Good. He dragged a metal table over. On it sat a ruggedized laptop, not hers, but one of theirs. I need you to do something for me. Ava, Lorenzo said. He pulled a gun and set it on the table. The FBI is sniffing around. I need you to write a script that wipes the digital trail between me and the Kovac crew. I can't type if I'm tied up, Ava rasped, her throat dry. Lorenzo took a knife and cut the ties on her hands, but he grabbed her left wrist immediately, slamming it onto the table. He pressed the barrel of the gun against her knuckles. One hand, he said, and if you try anything funny, I will blow your fingers off one by one. Ava rubbed her chafed wrist. She looked at the laptop. It was logged in as administrator. You want me to delete the evidence? She asked. I want you to scrub it so clean that God himself couldn't find it, Lorenzo said. Ava stared at the screen. She could feel the smartwatch burning against her skin. She looked at Lorenzo, then at Misha, who was watching from the doorway. Okay, she said, I will do it. She began to type. Her hand shook, but her mind was cold. She wasn't writing a deletion script. She was writing a mask. She opened the command terminal. She typed in a series of commands that looked like a standard data purge. System flush all, secure delete logs, but underneath the syntax, hidden in the variable definitions. She linked the execute button to the payload she had prepared at the gala. When Lorenzo hit enter, he wouldn't be deleting the files. He would be broadcasting them to every news outlet, police precinct, and federal agency in the state. I need the encryption key for the root directory, Ava said, pausing. Lorenzo scoffed. He leaned over her shoulder and typed in a password. Kingpin 123. Pathetic, Ava thought. She finished the code. She created a large red button on the screen labeled Initiate System Wipe. It is ready, she said, leaning back. All you have to do is click that. Lorenzo smiled. He looked at Misha. See, it is easy when you have the right motivation. He reached for the mouse. Suddenly, the heavy steel doors of the warehouse groaned. A deafening screech of metal on metal echoed through the space. Lorenzo froze. What was that? Misha shouted. Drawing his weapon, the doors flew open. A single figure stood in the silhouette of the streetlights. Lorenzo! Dante's voice was a thunderclap. He walked into the light, his hands held out to his sides, showing he was unarmed. You are a hard man to kill. Dante! Lorenzo shouted, grabbing Ava and hauling her up, using her as a shield again. But you are stupid to come here alone. I am not alone, Dante said calmly. He stopped 20 feet away. And neither are you. What are you talking about? Lorenzo sneered. Dante looked at Ava. His eyes briefly flickered to the laptop on the table, then back to her. He gave the slightest nod. Check your network. Lorenzo, Dante said. I think you have a leak. Lorenzo looked confused. He glanced at the laptop. The red button was pulsing. Kill him! Lorenzo screamed to Misha. Misha raised his rifle. "Lorenzo, wait!" Ava shouted. "If you shoot him, the FBI moves in. They are watching the live feed." Lorenzo hesitated. "What live feed? The one you are about to start," Ava said. She lunged forward, not away from him, but toward the table. She slammed her hand down on the enter key. "Execute." The screen flashed green. Upload started. Broadcasting. "What did you do?" Lorenzo screamed, shoving Ava aside. He stared at the screen as thousands of files began to scroll rapidly. Bank transfers, murder orders, emails implicating him and Kovac. Outside, the night sky lit up with the red and blue strobes of a dozen police cruisers. A bullhorn crackled. "This is the FBI. We have the building surrounded. Drop your weapons, you traitorous witch!" Lorenzo roared. He raised his gun, aiming it squarely at Ava's chest. "No!" Dante shouted. Dante didn't run for cover. He ran for her. Lorenzo pulled the trigger. Dante slammed into Ava, his momentum carrying them both to the concrete floor behind a stack of shipping crates. A bullet sparked against the metal floor right where Ava had been standing. Gunfire erupted from all sides. The glass windows high above shattered as Hart's tactical team rappelled in. Misha and the Kovac men opened fire on the agents. It was chaos, deafening noise, smoke and screaming. Dante covered Ava with his body, pressing her into the narrow gap between the crates and the wall. He was heavy, warm, and trembling. "Are you hit?" he shouted over the noise of automatic rifles. "No," Ava cried, clutching his shirt. "I'm fine." He gasped. He looked down at her. His face was smeared with grime, his eyes wild with adrenaline. "You did it," he said. "The files are out. I saw the alert on my phone. I told you I would fix it." Ava sobbed, half laughing, half crying. Dante looked at the chaos around them, the end of his empire, the destruction of the life he had known. Then he looked at her. He didn't say anything else. He just lowered his head and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was fierce, desperate, and consuming. It was a kiss that tasted of fear and victory. Ava grabbed his face with both hands, pulling him closer, needing to feel the life in him. The war raged inches away, bullets thudding into the wood of the crates, men shouting orders, but in that small, shadowed space, there was only them. Dante broke the kiss, resting his forehead against hers, breathing hard. "Stay down," he commanded softly. "It is almost over." The firefight lasted another 2 minutes. Then silence fell, broken only by the shouts of agents clearing the room. "Clear! Secure!" Agent Hart walked into view, her weapon drawn but lowered. She saw Dante and Ava rising from behind the crates. Lorenzo was on the ground, wounded but alive, being cuffed by 2 agents. Misha was gone, taken out in the initial breach. Hart looked at Dante. She looked at the laptop screen, which now displayed a massive upload complete banner. "You kept your word." "Romano," Hart said, holstering her weapon. Dante helped Ava stand. He kept his arm around her, supporting her weight. "So did you," Dante said. Hart looked at Ava. "Miss Nguyen," Hart said, "we have a medic outside and a witness statement form, but after that, you are free to go." Ava looked at Dante. He was looking at her with a mixture of pride and sadness, as if he expected her to walk away and never look back. She reached out and took his hand, interlocking their fingers. "We are free to go," Ava corrected. 6 months later, the sign on the frosted glass door read Harbor Shield Solutions. The office was located in a renovated loft in the Arts District, far away from the docks, far away from the shadows. It was bright, filled with plants and the hum of expensive, legitimate servers. Ava sat at her desk, reviewing a security audit for a local hospital network. She wore a soft cream sweater and jeans. She looked healthy. The dark circles were gone. Dante stood by the whiteboard, explaining a threat model to a new intern. He wore a simple button-down shirt, no tie. He looked younger, lighter. The lines of constant paranoia had smoothed out from around his eyes. The door chimed. Lynn Nguyen bustled in, carrying a massive Tupperware container that smelled of lemongrass and chili. "Lunchtime," she announced. "You two work too hard. Eat. Mom, you just brought us food yesterday." Ava groaned, though she immediately cleared a space on her desk. That was leftover, Lynn said, waving her hand. This is fresh. Dante, you are too skinny. You need protein. Dante smiled, a real, easy smile that still made Ava's heart stutter. Thank you. Lynn, it smells amazing. Lynn fussed over them, ladling curry into bowls. She watched them with sharp, knowing eyes. She noticed how Dante pulled out Ava's chair for her. She noticed how Ava instinctively handed Dante a napkin before he even asked. She noticed the way they gravitated toward each other, like planets in a binary orbit. I am going to check the stock in the back, Lynn announced, giving them privacy they hadn't asked for but clearly wanted. Dante picked up his bowl, but he didn't eat. He walked over to the balcony door and stepped out. Ava followed him. The balcony overlooked the city skyline. It was twilight. The skyscrapers of Harbor City were just starting to light up, glittering like diamonds against the purple sky. Ava leaned against the railing next to him. Thinking about the old office? She asked quietly. Dante took a deep breath of the cool air. Sometimes, he admitted, I miss the certainty of it. In that life, you knew who the bad guys were. They were the ones shooting at you. In this legitimate world, the politics are more exhausting than the turf wars. Ava laughed. That is just capitalism. Dante, it is a different kind of gangster. Dante turned to look at her. The wind caught her hair, blowing it across her face. He reached out and tucked it back, a hand lingering on her cheek. You could have walked away, he said softly. That night at the warehouse. You could have taken the immunity and left me to the wolves. Ava covered his hand with hers. I told you, she said. I am not just the IT girl, and you are not just the boss. We are partners. Dante smiled, a crooked, boyish expression that he saved only for her. Partners. He agreed. But if you ever change my admin password to password 123, again as a joke, I am firing you. Ava smirked. It was password 1234, and it was a security test. You failed. Dante laughed, pulling her into him. He wrapped his arms around her waist, and she rested her hands on his chest, feeling the steady, calm beat of his heart. He looked down at her, his eyes full of a love that had been forged in fire and tempered in the quiet moments that followed. I love you, Ava, he whispered. I love you too. Dante, she replied. He kissed her then, a long, tender kiss as the city lights glowed around them. They were standing on the edge of the world they had survived, no longer hiding in the shadows, but living in the light they had built together. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Ava and Dante. I hope you enjoyed this journey from the high-stakes world of cybercrime to a hard-won happily ever after. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment down below telling me where you are listening from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoyed this, please make sure to hit that subscribe button for Mafia romance stories so you never miss a new episode. Share your thoughts on the ending in the comments. Did Lorenzo get what he deserved? Let me know. Until next time.